Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley, and this is a little Shropshire church. It's Leebotwood. Now, Leebotwood is a church that's founded in the 12th century, and until the Reformation, it is in the hands of the Augustinian canons of Haumont Abbey near Shrewsbury. So it's served not by secular priests, that is, parish priests, but by an Augustinian canon. It's an amazing building because not only do we have original 12th century walls, medieval wall painting, but we have this wonderful 18th century interior that is effectively intact with box pews, benches at the back, nice pulpit. So let's have a look around and see the wonders of Leebotwood. So here we are in St Mary's, Leebotwood. I tried to get here last year, but it wasn't open at the time. It's recovering from COVID, of course, but now it's open again, which is a wonderful thing because it's one of my favourite little Shropshire churches. Here we are at the West End, and you can see here we've got these lovely box pews, we've got a nice three-decker pulpit, and we've got this big medieval font, a nice tub. Now, the church is founded at some point in the 12th century, and in 1170 or so, King Henry II gives the church to Haumont Abbey, and it remains owned by the abbey and staffed by Augustinian canons until the 16th century, the Reformation. We have here a nice wall painting, perhaps 14th century. It's quite fragmentary, but it gives some idea of the sort of, and obviously the colours that survive are the reds in particular, but there would have been blues, and of course you see the reds and yellows have survived. And it's something that people often miss, and the Victorians often missed about medieval churches. They were very colourful places. The Reformation leads to walls being whitewashed, but then having text painted on them, and it's not really until the 18th century when we get perhaps your classic whitewashed church. This, of course, is a church where there's a major house, major country house here, and this has led to all these memorials on the walls. But again, a nice pulpit. You've got your pulpit proper, and then you've got your reading desk, and lower down there would have been the parish clerk as well, who, of course, as I've said in previous videos when I looked at three-decker pulpits, the parish clerk leads the people in their responses. One thing to note about this sort of 18th century interior is you didn't really have choir stalls, and so the chancel has box pews in as well. Essentially, it's how many seats can we fit in this building? And then, of course, at the back, we've got the West Gallery. I suspect it's locked because of health and safety. Normally they are when the church is open to visitors. But that would have had the little orchestra up there and the choir. The orchestra would be made up of various local people who knew how to play a musical instrument. So you'd have fiddles, you'd have a big bass, you'd have some woodwind, you'd essentially have whatever someone could play. Memorials here are very largely to the Corbetts of Longnaw Hall. You saw Longnaw back last year, and this is very close to Longnaw. These various Corbett memorials. I've got here, for example, Panton Corbett, eldest son of Archdeacon Corbett. He married Lucy Favoretta, daughter of Dr. Jones of Lichfield, by whom he had two sons, Richard Edward and one daughter, Favoretta. And it tells us that he died at Longnaw Hall, 22nd November, 1855, aged 70, and he was MP for Shrewsbury, or one of the two borough MPs Shrewsbury had. The electoral system, of course, has changed enormously since then. And all these various, as you just see, they vary from these simple memorials here to this whacking great one here, which is, of course, as one might expect, in Latin. Uverdale Corbett Baronet. Very, very splendid. There's a little bit of English as well as Latin. um, so, Edward Corbett. We've got here three-sided communion rails. These really fell out of fashion in the 19th century, but the whole point of three-sided communion rails is that you can have as many people as possible around the communion table. We've got benches here for folk at communion, I expect, and again more of these memorials. This is John James Edward Hamilton, eldest and last surviving son of Admiral Sir Edward Hamilton, and so he's the husband of Favouretta, daughter of Panton Corbett. So that's why he's buried here. These connections. There is kind of a screen, but it's not much of a screen, because again this is an 18th century interior. This is not a 19th century ecclesiological type interior. You'll notice the walls are very thick, very typical of these 12th century buildings, and also they have what's called a batter, that is to say they're thicker at the bottom than at the top. Or at least usually that's a batter. I'm pretty sure this is a batter. It's not that the walls are really leaning outwards. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are. Box pew here. This would, one suspects, be the vicar's pew, and then you've got here, this would be the big house pew, or certainly the pew where the folk from the big house might have sat. And the pews still have, some of them, these plates on them. Let's see what they say, shall we? Well, this one says Micklewood, so that's the house it's associated with. And this one, Longnall Park Farm. Here we've got a slightly larger pew. It's always very interesting to look at these box pews. They very much offend the Victorians. Victorians don't like box pews. And part of it is that, well, it's just this snobbery. They don't look medieval. Well, neither do the benches the Victorians like, because in the Middle Ages things were even more primitive. But instead it's this almost attempt to get to a fake medieval. So here we've got the east window, and this is quite a common kind of early 19th century east window. Faith, hope and charity. And you see you've got faith with the cross, you've got hope with the anchor, and you've got charity or Christian love in the middle, embracing these little children. So it's all very much this iconography that if you know it, you know what you're looking at. Unfortunately, one of the things that's happened more and more is that people have lost the knowledge of this iconography, and so they scratch their heads looking at anything that isn't labelled. I've seen cases where people have just not been able to recognise the apostles by their symbols, and you think, well, just look up a book on iconography. But there we are. So it's a tiny little building, really, and they just stuffed so much. And this is the other thing about these box pew churches, is that so much seems to have been stuffed into the little building. So that's the inside. You see here there's a nice big door, and that of course leads into the tower, and the tower then leads us outside. The tower effectively is a porch. Here we are, and there's the outer door. As we turn around, you've got your hat rack, which is very helpful for those of us who wear hats, and the inside of the door. So that's the inside of Leebotwood. Let's have a look outside. And so here we are outside at Leebotwood. Parish churches are, as we've noted before, traditionally oriented east-west, and the main entrance is usually on the south side. In this case it's at the west end, but there clearly was originally a door on the south side. It's a very simple building, these Norman buildings. Clearly the tower is a late tradition. These Norman buildings often are very, very simple, like nearby Longnall, which has been extended and altered in the 13th century, but this is very small, very plain. So that honking noise is the train. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but there is a railway not far from here. So let's have a look around the outside. Very plain, very lovely. And so this is the south side. The graveyard here is not mown. They don't have a flock of sheep to well, it's not mown very much here, and didn't have a flock of sheep to keep it down, so it's got quite long. And the idea is, A, you save on mowing, but B, it helps with biodiversity. It becomes a wildlife refuge. You see, it's a very plain building. There's no structural distinction between nave and chancel. This little oblong tower is, I believe, early 19th or late 18th century. The windows have been put in again about the same time. Originally the windows would have been little slit windows, tiny on the outside, but splayed on the inside so as to admit more light than you might think. Just getting my, there we are. And there's the east window. So we go around the east end. You can just see there's the lich gate. A lich, of course, is an old English word for a corpse. And a lich gate is so called because it's a gate that provides shelter for the party who are coming in for the burial, and they come under there with the coffin. So here we are, here's the north side. North side is generally much plainer. You can see here there's just one window on the north side. The north side doesn't get much sun, so you don't need as much in the way of window openings, and it can get quite cold in the winter. And again, the graveyard here, this is the older part of the graveyard. It's quite overgrown. All these gravestones, higgledy-piggledy, leaning over slightly because they tended to put them up before the ground had settled. And so you have these, so many, this is of course a family memorial here, the Carters, and two infant children, two children who died in infancy. We shall go to them, but they shall not return to us. Of course, quoting King David speaking about his infant son by Bathsheba who died. It's a lovely building, and it's very simple, very plain. It's quite surprising, in fact, to find those memorials to the Longnaw Hall family there, partly given that Longnaw is, of course, a bigger church and is right next to Longnaw Hall, but doesn't have as much wall space, I expect. And you can see up there's a roof light, and that light's, of course, the gallery, the rear gallery. It's West Gallery, very important. There we are, that you can see how the tower is much broader north-south than it is east-west. It's, as I say, it is very much an oblong tower, and it's been put on the end of this Norman church that originally had no tower. This simple low doorway. It's not a country house church, this one, although it's got those country house memorials. It's very much a church for ordinary folk, which is always nice to see. Yes, I mean, that's the sort of window you'd be looking at. I suspect that has been taken from the building when they put the tower on. That's an older window. And here we are, the west door. So, the south door even. And the south door has been filled in, as at Longnaw, and you can see it's been turned into a nice window with these nice leaded panes. So there we are, that is St Mary's, Leebotwood. Well, so there we have it, St Mary's, Leebotwood, a lovely little rural church here in the Shropshire Hills, as you in fact just off the road between Shrewsbury and Ludlow. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed making it, coming out to explore this really beautiful part of rural Shropshire. So may God bless you and keep you until next time.